Okay, today we're going to start off a little bit differently. I'm not sure if you know who the Flintstones and Jetsons are, but I do have that question for you. What is the difference between the Jetsons and the Flintstones? To help you know who they are, I swiped their theme songs off of YouTube. Here's the Flintstones. Okay, that was Fred Flintstone. He was a caveman, and now we're going to go look at the Jetsons. Okay, that's not usually the way I start off my videos, but I did want you to see those two things because the next question is important. Okay, what's the difference between the economy of the Jetsons and the Flintstones? You can pause me if you want. I'll give you 5, 2, 1. Okay, what jobs do they have? They each had different jobs. Okay, Fred, his theme song, he went from work to the movie theater. George was taking his family and dropping them off at their schools and shopping and then going to work. Okay, what jobs they have? I'll give you 5 seconds. You can pause me too. Next, what industries do they work in? And it would be tough to see or tough to say, but what do you think they did? What types of jobs do they have? I'll give you 5 seconds. And you can pause this again. Okay, last question. How would you measure their wealth? Who would you say had the better quality of life? And we only saw the themes, so we don't know exactly what their life was like, but just based on the themes, what do you think? Okay, take another 5 seconds. Okay, now what we're looking at is economy, okay? And what we are going to base our economy on is the GDP. Now the GDP is actually a fairly modern invention. I think it was invented about the time of the Great Depression, so about 80 years ago. This is the way that we could look at how or measure what was going on in the economy. Before, if we go way, way, way back in history, okay, everyone did agriculture. That's how you made your living. You grew food, you raised animals so you could eat. You built your own home. That was it. Now, as economies changed, industry became more important. And this is where we start to diversify the economy, okay? And remember, we went over this in the last lesson. So economy is going to be in that primary economic sector. Industry is in the second, it's manufacturing. Okay, and as we start to diversify employment, we start to move toward manufacturing, where people are building things. Now, in the 1800s, that was the Industrial Revolution. And so only 200 years ago did we really start this Industrial Revolution where things were starting to be mass produced for everyone to use. Now, that tertiary sector is services. Remember, we went over that last time. We have retail, finances, communication, hospitality, real estate, information technology. So those are our services. Now, GDP, like I said in the 1930s, they invented GDP so we could measure what was going on in the economy and try to fix it if we had problems. So gross domestic product. Okay, that's what GDP stands for. Now, GDP is the total market value of all finished goods within a country's borders in a specific time. Typically, we look at the GDP over the course of a year. It just gives us an idea of what the wealth of the country is. Okay, then we divide it. We can actually do GDP per capita, which is where we take all of those things we buy and sell over the year and divide it with the people in the country. Right now, the United States, I didn't look this up, but we're probably in the 10 to 30 range. So we're in the 10th to 30th place, somewhere in that GDP. The number one countries that have the greatest gross domestic product per capita, per person, are smaller countries. Singapore, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, those countries typically have a very high GDP. But there are some other countries that have a high GDP too that are not as small. About 20 years ago, I think we were tied with Norway for 10th. Since then, maybe this was 20 years ago. Since then, we've slid, and Norway has maintained or actually advanced. So GDP just measures the relative wealth of a country based on its people. And this circle graph down here shows us the GDP for the entire United States as a whole. The United States has 0.9% of its economy is from agriculture. About 19%, a little over 19% is industry, and the rest is services. Now, last lesson I told you is we did have quaternary, which is that information, not the manufacturing of information technology, but actually the production of information, education, public sector works, and research and development. Now, that's something important because when it comes to economic theory, there is a theory that to go beyond these three levels, the only way you can do that is to innovate. So if you want to increase your GDP beyond agriculture, industry, and services, you've got to innovate. You've got to become better at what you've done before. And there are different ways. In agriculture, it'd probably be adding fertilizer or machines to harvesting your crops. In industry, there's going to be many things you can do there. Building factories, building robots to work in the factories, etc. Services, there are things we can do there as well that will enhance each of those sectors. Okay, computers, information technology is one way that we have enhanced our ability to maintain records, communicate, all those things. Now, when we're looking at this, I do want you to focus in on the Puget Sound Lowland. Okay, the Puget Sound Lowland is our economic engine for Washington State. And there are several reasons why. First reason why Puget Sound is very important is because of the Pacific Rim. If you remember your old stories about Christopher Columbus, he was sailing around the world trying to get to India. Okay, he didn't realize that North America and South America were in the way. And that's why he mistakenly called the people in North America and South America Indians. The rich market back in 1400s, early 1500s was in Asia. Okay, China was the wealthiest country back then. India was wealthy too. Europe was not so wealthy. And so as he sailed around, he wanted to get to that far east. Now, the west coast of the United States faces the far east. And those are some very rich markets. We import a lot of things from China and Japan and Korea and all over that area of the world. And we also export a lot of things. One of our major exports for Washington is Boeing airplanes. Those go all over the world, not just to Asia. We also export apples, etc. We'll see a list of those coming up here in a minute. Now, ports. This is the Port of Seattle. right downtown, a little bit south of downtown. It's on the Green River. And so those large cranes serve to load and unload those ships as they come in. This is the port of Longview down along the Columbia River. And so as raw products are developed, they can be loaded right onto the ships. These are our three main ports. And the other one is Tacoma. Okay, Bellingham also has a port where shipping can take place, but these are our main ports. In fact, Tacoma has a great port. It is, I believe, called Commencement Bay. Seattle's port is also excellent. Longview is very good too. And so these ports are where we channel our goods to be bought and sold. In the old days in our history, okay, people would compete with who had the best port. And that's eventually we'll look at the history and see how these cities developed because of their ports. If you haven't noticed, but most of the largest cities in North America are on the coasts, on the East Coast and West Coast. Okay, the bigger towns in the interior are there for other reasons. They could be transportation hubs, but they are there because of passes, rivers, also of railroads. So there are some man-made things that happen too. Now, some of the development, and this is again innovation. Okay, Microsoft was innovatively created in the Redmond area. We have Jerry Larson, and I love his humor. Two old dogs watching a male cat. They are getting old. This one, Eddie Bauer. I do not know what store that is. Mrs. Foles put this together, this part of it. And also this guy, okay, he invented those little tabs to seal your bread up with. That came from our neck of the woods. And if you think it may not be very innovative, think of trying to put a twist tie on each little stack of bread. This makes it so a machine can do it. Applets and cotlets, okay, some of the food agriculture we ship overseas. Nordstrom, big store chain that was invented or created up in Seattle area. Boeing, okay, the flight industry. In fact, back in the early 1970s, Boeing was the major industry in Washington State, and now Starbucks. So we have some very big industries based out of Seattle area, Western Washington, okay? And again, it all focuses on innovation. How do they put these things together? Now, up there in the upper left-hand corner, some of the attractions for the Puget Sound Lowlands. We have the tulips up in Skagit County. This is the Troll underneath the Fremont Bridge on the north side of Lake Union and the locks. And there is a view of downtown Seattle from Queen Anne Hill. It is definitely our economic engine. So, as you're putting together the Puget Sound Lowlands, pay a bit of attention to that economy. Ask questions about where these things came from, why did they develop in that area, and hopefully we can have a good discussion about it later on. Good luck.